Good afternoon, executives of the gaming industry. Thank you very much for being there on the other side of the screen, following us, supporting us with this space that we have called GNM One-on-One. It's a cycle of interviews, personal, professional interviews with leaders of the gaming industry. Today, we have the privilege, the honor to come with us Drew Pawlak. Drew Pawlak, he's the Vice President for Latin America and General Manager for Mexico of AGS, American Gaming Systems. Thank you very much, Drew, for being there, for sharing with us your life and your career.
Thank you very much for having me. I certainly appreciate the opportunity to talk with you. And I think you guys are doing good work as we all try and reinvent ourselves during this pandemic. So we really want to appreciate it.
And this reinvention of contents in our side, and specifically about this space, is to make a trip about your life, about your career, about your experience, about the issues you want to share about the business of your company. And the first question, Drew, is related to your upbringing, to your family, the values they share with you, and how those values you are applying them today in your daily life.
Well, thank you. First, I really want to say hello to everybody down in Latin America and send our regards. This is a really tough time for everybody. Globally, it's, it feels, for me, it often feels like it's just me experiencing this pandemic, stuck in my house on Zoom or Teams or any other the platforms to communicate with people. But this is truly a global experience for everybody. And I heard somebody say during when all this started that, people say we're all in the same boat, and that's just not necessarily the case. We're all in the same storm, but not necessarily on the same boat. And I know certain countries and populations have experienced immensely differently than what others have. And so I want to thank you for the opportunity to connect with your viewers or your readers. I'm not sure what you use, your people who are watching this. Thank you very much. Look, I was raised in kind of what I say the typical American family today. My parents got divorced when I was young. I was raised by a single mother that worked and had a life to build with a couple of her kids, and raised in California, in Southern California, until I was about 10 or 11, and then we moved to Hawaii. And Hawaii was a very special place to be raised. Very natural, tropical, a lot of time outdoors and healthy. And that's kind of where I feel like I'm from, right, is the state of Hawaii. But my family's values, we're a working class family, my parents did lots of different stuff to earn money and to support their children. And I learned that I had to be resilient and to kind of make my own way in the world. And so I think that the biggest value that they got me is that I was capable, right? I was capable of facing any challenge that life brought me. And I was resilient in when opportunities and things like that changed, that I could bounce back and I could find my mode. And that's certainly what I've taken into my professional life as well, is that, I face a challenge and I find the resources internally and kind of through my network to give me the skill set to address this new challenge that I'm looking at professionally. And I think that that's a really strong value to have, is that, there is a can-do thing. I rely on a team and a network. My team in Mexico is amazing. And they have had my back, and I've had their back through this entire process of my tenure at AGS, which is coming up on 5 years. So, my family is still very important to me. My parents have both passed now, but I have pictures around the house about them, and I often look back and say, would they be proud of me as I am today? And the answer that generally comes is, yeah, they would. They would be proud of my life and proud of the life that I've built. My sister, who I'm quite close with, and my two nieces live here in Las Vegas. Well, my two nieces don't, but my sister does, and her husband, and still have that connection of that person that I've known my entire life. I'm 56, no dye in the hair, by the way. I'm 56, and it's interesting to still be connected to that person. My sister is a little bit older than me, and just a little bit. And she is the person I've known the longest in my life, right? And having her being a champion in my corner is one of the most amazing gifts that I've ever been given, that connection, right? So family is important to me, and family is, and the values that they instilled in me still reside deeply.
Great words, Drew. Thank you for sharing that story with us. Talking about specific about gaming, what was your personal relationship with gambling before entering the industry? Did you went to casino? Did you go to casinos? I mean, did you have any contact with gaming? You were interested in gaming, or you have no relationship at all?
Um, it's an interesting question and connection. So Hawaii, the state of Hawaii is Las Vegas. So there's, Las Vegas is known as the ninth island. So the connection between Las Vegas and Hawaii is very, very close. Boyd Gaming made a huge investment going back to the late 70s, early 80s in attracting Hawaiian gamblers, or not necessarily Hawaiian, but residents of Hawaii to come to Las Vegas. There is a hotel downtown called the California Hotel. You walk in there, they're playing Hawaiian music, they have Hawaiian food, Hawaiian brands. Many of the people that work there are locals who've retransplanted here. And on any given day you go down there, it's like stepping into a neighborhood in Hawaii. So I was very aware of Las Vegas. I was very, very aware of Las Vegas. I was not a gambler. I'm a very, I don't like to lose money. I don't like to lose money at all. Like even with video games, if you go back, I'm a video game guy, cabinet video, not gaming video. And, I would lose a game for a quarter on Mortal Kombat, and I would think that it was unfair, and I would be the one that would crack the screen, right? So I can imagine myself with slot machines or table games. I think I'd end up in jail for assault or something. So, but I ended up in Las Vegas as we started, a colleague of mine, a friend of mine at the time, said, hey, let's start a business. And I returned home from Spain at working at the World's Fair. So I had a little bit of pocket money. I was there for a year and a half and I worked a lot and didn't do much else. And we went to the San Francisco franchise show. The idea was I was in the hospitality business on the restaurant side, and he was in the real estate business, and that we would buy an area development for Hawaii. So we would buy the brand of, say, the next kind of Subway, up and coming Subway. I would do the food operations, he would do the real estate side. And we're, late 20s in San Francisco, new entrepreneurs, and we run across this big booth with pumping music and beautiful girls with laser tag packs strapped to their bodies. And we say, what is this? And they say, oh, it's laser tag. It's a family entertainment center. So we put money down for that and to do these particular brand in Hawaii, and then came back and decided, oh, maybe we should do, what's that thing called, due diligence, and figure out if there's a way we can do this here. And so we started researching the family entertainment center industry, location-based entertainment industry, and this laser tag concept. And this is probably late 1991. And we stumbled across a product that was not in the US yet, competitor to the one we purchased the rights for. And so we got on a plane, we flew to Australia, we took all of our money and purchased the rights to the Americas for a laser tag product, so all of North America and South America. And then we didn't have any money left to do anything with. So we quickly found an angel investor to help us fund the first store and to develop a franchise concept. And so now we started looking at franchise laws and realized that nobody was going to come to Hawaii to, research a franchise concept and do that, because Hawaii is one of those places. The West Coast goes to Hawaii often. East Coast goes to Hawaii once in their life or twice in their life. It's just too far. They go to the Caribbean. And so we knew we needed to move the company, and my partner was a fan of Las Vegas, and he said, everybody goes to Vegas. And so I got on a plane, never having been to Las Vegas in my life, to move here and start a company here. And we did that back in 1992. And as soon as I got to Las Vegas, I fell in love with it. There is an excitement in Las Vegas that's like nowhere else in the world. It's a world-class city, as you guys all know. Fantastic dining, entertainment. People. It's international. It's a world-class city, but it's in the middle of nowhere. Cost of living is fantastic, and I really fell in love with what the history of Vegas and the I think the bridge between two worlds. It's a great place, and so I immediately got attracted to the gambling world because there's a sex appeal to gambling. There's a vice to it, right? And so that's really exciting to people. There's so much mystery in what we do. Setting up gambling environments, developing games, table games, slot machines, all that sort of, there's a lot of mystery behind it. And so that was very appealing for me to start looking at. And I always assumed, I got back here in 1992 and the product was called Ultrazone. And it was, I was in there for 9 years, but I was always fascinated with the gambling side of the world, the hospitality side of it. And I assumed, I'll do Ultrazone and I'll, end up in the casino business. I'll be a host or something like that. And it was as I was watching it that I saw the other kind of niche industries and, all the suppliers. I had friends that worked for a slot machine company, or they were a tech supervisor. We were an electronics company. We hired tech people from that industry into our company. So after about 9 years, I left Ultrazone. I sold, my shares to my partners. I ended up in the live entertainment business and started producing shows for Carnival Cruise Lines and hospitality parks and things like that, theme parks. And then I met a guy at a Christmas event. It's about this time of year. I was playing with his daughter. His daughter was like 6 and she was, running across the room, throwing herself in my lap. And he walked over and said, "You're a really patient guy." And I said, "Oh, thanks." He says, "What do you do for a living?" I said, "I'm in business development." He said, "What kind of business do you develop?" And I go through my litany of what I've done. And he, entertainment business is interesting to people. And so it was, a long conversation about that. I said, "What do you do?" And he said, "We do a test lab." And I said, what do you test? He said, "We test gambling products." And I was fascinated with that, right? And we talked for, a couple hours at the event, and we had lunch a couple days later. And he said, "I'd like you to meet my partner. We're opening an office in Las Vegas. I think you'd be a great fit for this type of thing." And so I ended up joining what is BMM Test Labs and staying with them for about 14 years. And so that view of the gaming industry from a test lab. So there's really only 2 test labs that certify all the gaming products, math product systems, progressive controllers, anything that touches the gaming floor. There's only really 2 labs that function in the world. And it gives you immediate access to the very senior level people inside of every manufacturer. Not really on the operator side, but really on the supplier side and all the regulatory side, because the test labs are authorized by regulators to test on their behalf and test to their standards, their adopted standards, and to issue reports to them, and they'll accept those reports as being independently done. And so I spent 14 years living in the test lab world, having a client roster of somewhere between 150 and 200 clients all around the world. BMM had 9 offices around the world, and I headed up North America and South America for them, but I was effectively their kind of global head of business development. And so I started getting to know suppliers from Europe and, operators from South Africa and, Australia and Asia, obviously in the US, and South America was one of my markets. We opened an office in Lima, Peru, and started being down there kind of on a every 8-week basis. And doing SAGC and spending time in Chile and Colombia. I really fell in love with Latin America. Really did. Did that answer your question? I think it did. I'm not sure.
Yes, totally. I mean, that's fascinating how you explain or your career and the different segments of the industry that you were able to learn about. I mean, when you take a look back, I mean, when you check on your career, what's your balance in terms of what did you learn and what did you contribute to the industry? You know, you said before that your parents would be proud of you. Are you proud of what you are today, who you are in the gaming industry, and what you have learned? I mean, this is not therapy, you know, but
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
taking a look back and saying, well, I've been working for more than 15 years, so I've been doing this and that. And do you ambition for more? What's your feeling right now when you check on what you have done?
Great question. So, couple of things. BMM is one of two global test labs. They're the original. They're the oldest private test lab in the world, but they weren't the biggest, right? We entered the U.S. market, and their competitor GLI had a fundamental monopoly. And I, naively thought, oh, I joined them. They had 28 licenses, and to effectively test a product from beginning to end, you need every single license along the way. If not, the major suppliers just can't use you because they submit the product once and they transfer it everywhere. So if I'm missing one of the loops in the chains, that is a very challenging product, because then they'll have to resubmit that to the authorized test lab. So I thought naively, oh, they've only been here 6 months. They got 28. They have 28 licenses. That's 10% of the way there. We'll be done in a year. And 14 years later, they were not really nearly done. And so I think effectively, I think the biggest contribution I've done into the gambling world is to help BMM grow to be a global lab that's authorized 100% in the US. And to, monopolies are not good in any industry. And it's definitely not good on the regulatory side of it. When there's a regulatory vehicle like a test lab, that's a monopoly. And so that space has become competitive, which not only impacts the cost of testing, but it also impacts how fast things get through the queue, what companies get through the queue, how fast it is. Because if you're the biggest company, if you're the biggest client of that test lab, you can control the funnel for everybody behind you. And so I think with the globalization of BMM and the authorization throughout about 400 jurisdictions around the world, that space, there's some checks and balances in that space, and I had a huge part in contributing to that. And so that's been, I think that also that space gave me a really particular view of the gambling world, a really unique view. Of understanding what manufacturers, what their culture is like, what their technology is like, kind of what they're philosophically towards how they approach a market, how they treat their clients, how they treat their customers. And so I think it gave me a really unique view that allowed me to make some good decisions in the second half of my career, which is on the supplier side. So I think after that, I think that there's, I think I've made my contribution into the gambling world that I've something to be proud of. And I think there's something to, I think that there's a value that I still bring. Because the test lab, I had access to C-level positions everywhere. And there's a couple of people that I truly admire in the gambling world. And I kind of try and carry myself up. And one of them is a guy named Jens Hawley, who was the head of Novomatic for a long time in their BD world. And Jens was a fantastic guy who always had time for everybody. He treated every conversation like you were the only person that mattered to him. And so as I got to know Jens over the world or over the years, he really impacted on me, because I was just, as BMM, we were struggling to try and get recognized, struggling to try and get business. And he felt like he valued my opinion. He was supportive of our quest. Really started, I've really adopted him in my mindset as I talk with people and as I work with my teams and, my executives internally. Another guy that's still a close friend, Jens, passed away and suddenly, but he was a great loss to the gaming industry and certainly the Latin American industry. So the other guy is a guy named Ortiz, who I admire greatly. He is charming and fantastic, and he felt like he was a brother at arm. He, came out of this kind of particular type of gambling product of it being, Latin bingo or Brazilian bingo or just bingo, whichever way you want to call it. And wanted to help transition into the slot machine world. And I feel like I was a professional and collegial partner to him as he developed his slot line. And Zitra was an important client to BMM and is a great personal friend to me. And I genuinely appreciate him. So I kind of mimic those two. Another guy named Eric Fisher, who's the head of now what's called CPI, which used to be MEI. And Eric's got, just a fantastic, charming, smart guy that I just really enjoy watching and learning from. And I've been a big admirer of his for a lot of years, and he's a personal friend as well. So I've met some great people along the way who have kind of formed my views, and I try and mimic a lot of their kind of characteristics. I think I do it. I mean, I seem to be well liked and appreciated by others. And I'm not one that is like, I talk to all my competitors. I mean, they were all former clients. So even though now I'm at AGS, they're still friends. And I see it that it's that we collectively can do a lot more than just what I can do. And so I'm very in touch with all of our brand competitors. And I see that this is an industry that, we support, in our own little vertical, like me in Mexico and Latin America, but it's part of a big global network. And, we're talking about the growth and the integrity of gaming business globally. And I'm a big believer in all that because, this is a type of industry that only works on integrity. And so if our industry takes a hit from bad players, it hurts and affects all of us. So I collectively do that. That answer your question?
Yes, of course, more than answered. Thank you.
Oh, I'm not sure if that's a good thing or not.
No, it's good. It's good. Let's focus, please, Drew, on AGS.
Sure.
We should talk about products and then about people of the company. But
sure.
First, about products. The company provides and generates and provides products for both land-based and in the interactive gaming. So, in terms of this year specifically, where companies were closed in terms of operators and the iGaming industry and interactive segment had a boost in terms of revenue and in terms of people playing from a distance. How important is for your company to be able to provide for both segments and in comparison with your competitors to have the specific interactive segment of products, interactive line, and how much that line grow during this year?
Yes, we are in AGS is kind of a multifaceted supplier, fully integrated. We've got slot machines, right? Obviously, you guys are aware of those. We have slot machines that we sell, right? Like a normal vendor does. We have a very large route operation, about over 25,000 machines between the U.S. and Mexico. And then we also have an online division for AGS Interactive, which does real money gaming and also social gaming. We also have a table games division, which does proprietary games that we develop and design ourselves. Side bets, felts, and a big business around progressive controllers and shufflers. So I think the genesis of all those businesses all started differently, but the interactive division was started by acquiring a social gaming platform and doing that and easing our way into the real money gaming. And so during this pandemic, we support about, we have about 1,000 customers between the US and Mexico of live casinos and a few in the Philippines as well with a Latin bingo product. And over a period of about 3 weeks, we went from having 1,000 customers, meaning, some level of 1,000 invoices to send out, to zero, closed. When it started, when the whole pandemic started and the kind of forecasting started, and you saw cities starting to lock down, it was something I never thought I would see before in my life. And it was overwhelming. It really was, as they would say, all the casinos closed in Oklahoma, right? or as Mexico started closing, it was, boom. And I kept thinking like, Mexican operators, they're like, they're strong. They're just going to stay through this. Then it would be like, 10 and 10 today, 20 tomorrow. Pretty soon, 325 casinos that we support in Mexico, all closed. And so obviously, as with other companies who experience the same thing, our revenues went from this to this, right? And, we have 750 people that we are part of our team, or we had 750 people that are part of our team here at AGS. And we had to get into survival mode, and it was drastic. The one entity that continued to beat was the online gaming sector, which we're very small in that sector. It's a very small portion of our percentage of our revenue. But it's been great to see that entity grow through this. Gamblers want to gamble. And so they continue to gamble at home on our real money site. And in the markets that they can't play real money, our social business grew significantly as well. And so that entity continued to show ongoing revenue. And it's ahead of budget for the year, which is fantastic. It's ahead of EBITDA budget for the year, which is, even better. And I think has set it up with that focus on getting more content onto the real money gaming platform, and as markets continue to open. So in the US, kind of New Jersey was open, Pennsylvania opened in the midst of this, which was great. And then we have other markets that are quickly coming online in Canada here. And, obviously we're in several markets in the European jurisdictions. And I'm one that believes that the player is very different. I don't believe that there's crossover of people who play both. But there are people who only play at home, and there are people who only play in the casino. And so we don't see it as one cannibalizing another. So our current strategy in the iGaming world is we have a real money gaming site. We acquired an aggregator that we have our AGS, so it's a remote game server that we have AGS content on. We also make that remote game server available to other third-party content providers, so we can provide a healthy number of games when we integrate with an operator or a platform. And then the social side of it, which is a completely different platform. And we host kind of a casino for an operator, and we can white label that, so we can do one for, the Drew branded casino and serve up AGS games through that, a few table games and some slot content down on a social site where they only play for social value, right? They buy coins and win coins, but they can't spend those coins. Does that make sense? It's an interesting concept outside the U.S. It's something that, I sometimes struggle with. I don't get that mentality, but there's players that do.
So we have talked about the products, and now I would like you to talk about the people. This year, I'm aware that your company won the Employees' Choice Award as one of the best places to work. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Great. That's what every person, every employee wants to be in a place that has a good environment. So how would you describe the environment of your company, the working team that collaborates with you, and what is the AGS playbook?
Look, culture is, this goes to our executive team and to our leadership of David Lopez, who is, I certainly add him to the list of people I admire and kind of mimic, and probably am actually most like. I'm not very much like Jens or Johnny or Eric. I'm probably much more like David. AGS, the genesis of AGS is built out of really smart operators who were focused on the Class 2 business, and then we got acquired by a private equity group who recruited David Lopez to come in and run this, and he started rebuilding the company into really what you see today. David's smart, he's quick, he's got a level of grittiness to him, and street smart, and that's something that I really value. Put together a fantastic executive team to help him rebuild and brand this company. And the core value he believes is, our biggest asset is our people. And so he invests in people personally, as well as training wise and that sort of stuff. Takes a great concern and care about those people. And the team he built around him, our CMOs, and then a lady named Julia, and she's Bogoslavsky. It's a difficult last name, but Julia's enough. And they really, I was around when they started building our core employee values. And, they wanted them to really reflect what AGS is about. And so, there's 10 guys. They sit on my desktop on my PC. They're part of what we do. There's a couple of them that resonate with me. David's very empowering. When we were going through the recruiting process, mostly via text, right? I mean, I met with him once, and then I met with the general counsel, and the offer was made, and we started doing that. But as we were going through the transition process, David's a big texter, and I like that about him. It's easy. And he said, "Okay, we're done, and you got the start date. Now I need to understand how you need to be managed." And I'd known David for years, and he's kind of all over the place. So I think that's why texting is perfect. And I said, "Look, I need you to focus long enough to kind of articulate the AGS vision to me and what that looks like. And then I'll come back in a couple of weeks and tell you how I see Mexico fits into that plan and get you to sign off on that. And then basically I need you to leave me the blank alone so I can execute." And he said, "I can do that." And that's exactly what he's done. He's given me a lot of autonomy to build my network and my office, my division, and that's fantastic. And so the value, I think that the core value of AGS that resonates with is act like a CEO, and that's what I do. I go to him for support. I go to the business for support when I need help, and then I get my help and I go back to my team and we execute. And I'm not looking for, and so that's a really big one for me. Another one that's really important to me is, and this is one of our core values, it's make your mother proud. And that's really important that we, for me, I think that resonates to everybody differently, but for me, that resonates that I care. Right? I truly do care. I care about my team. I care about our customers. I care about their customers. I care about our products. Like, I care about what AGS is developing. And that also, there's a level of integrity that is important, that our deals are clean and fair. And sometimes that's not always easy in the gambling world, but that we do clean and fair deals with everybody. I'm transparent. I'm not trying to, do tricky dicky stuff. It's not in my nature. I think my time at BMM and on the regulatory side of it, I know that regulators can swoop in and see your whole life. They can take your computer. They can take a look at all your bank accounts. Everything I do is above the board and clean. And that, in a sense, really does make my mom proud, right? And so I think that is, I live my life very, very transparently. And AGS supports that. It's truly about people. I think through the pandemic, this process, it's been about, our team safety, our company's security of, making sure we structure ourselves and put ourselves in a position to weigh this out. Nobody had any idea how long it was going to last or what it was going to look like. And so everybody dug deep and figured out a way to make that happen. And, we went through some layoffs, we went through some furloughs. Everybody stayed around, took significant pay cuts, and we're trying to figure out what the next step looks like. And that's everybody in Mexico. My team in Mexico is just, I can't, these guys are amazing. They really are. And so tightly knit and so committed to, this was an office that was Cadillac Jack that AGS bought. And it had kind of been bought and sold a few times. And this team, I mean, many of them been there for 15 years, right? Gone through all this transactions of, from, Mike Mackey, the founder of Cadillac Jack, to Gene Chayefsky, to Amaya, it was just like, now Poker Stars, but it was like this, and these guys just stayed. And didn't get a tremendous amount of product support, right? Because it's just Mexico, and these guys just stayed, and I inherited this team that would take a bullet for me, right? And I for them. And so that's been fantastic. And once I got there, I saw that the biggest thing that I could do was to build this bridge between Las Vegas AGS, who really had no experience in Mexico. They were terrified of it, had a different view of it than I did, and the Mexican team, who didn't know these people. And so I spent the first year building that bridge and a level of confidence in the team down there and in the market down there that it could actually grow. If we invested with AGS's latest products into that market, that business could throw off very good and valuable EBITDA to AGS up in Las Vegas. And over that time, build that connection, right? And so that's what my last 5 years has been kind of cementing that bridge between the two markets. And where Mexico is front of mind in Las Vegas, that team is front of mind. And all step, through David's trust of, his commitment to his employees and his team, his trust of me. He's always got my back. When I run into an internal problem, I struggle internally, I get to David and he's like, on text, of course, and he starts solving it immediately for me, right? Or helping me to find a method to solve, go talk to this person, that sort of stuff. And it's just been absolutely fantastic run. And so AGS is truly about its people and our culture and our quirkiness. It's really a fantastic place to work and deserving of those awards it's got. It's best place to work in one of the best places to work in Nevada, nationally, Atlanta itself, Oklahoma as well. And through this pandemic and how we have immediately downsized and kind of decided ourselves to ride this out, to bringing people back on, to getting people back to full pay. We did all that, keeping the best business at the health of the business at mind, and but with our employees' safety and their families concerned. So those decisions, as we were doing the layoffs and doing furloughs, they were very emotional decisions for the team, and with no certainty. And so David immediately started reaching out, doing a number of town halls. At one point, they were probably doing a town hall every 2 weeks with all of our employees globally, and being 100% transparent, answering their questions, their hard questions. When are we coming back to work? All these kinds of questions, right? That you really know there's no clear answer to. And we communicated our way through it. And I think that just builds a level of commitment to employees or to the company. And it's been it's been the hardest year of my year professionally, of just not knowing. There's always been challenges in business, but then there was always a way out. If I just made 10 more dials, I could try and make 2 more sales. If I re-engineer stuff a little bit on the back end side, show a little bit more margin, right? There's always a solution that I felt like I had some control over. And during this pandemic, it's been powerless for all of us, and for everybody in the world, not just us, right? It's everybody. And so that's been AGS has been watching David network his way through this. It's just been fantastic. And with their shareholders in mind, right? We're publicly traded, a small publicly traded company, but making those decisions for shareholder and shareholder value, that understanding that we have to commit to our employees, because this is what the value is. Granted, the value is over here with money and what's generated, but that's all happens with people. Our R&D team. These guys committed to making games and to doing this, to our sales team out there fielding them, to our tech support team that's out there servicing them. There's a lot of, there's the accountants on the back end side of it. It's, who bill it and invoice it, and there's, pay our vendors. There's this value chain in the game business that's much more complicated than what, is just seen in the casino, right? And we've had to make sure we share that up everywhere along the way, and we've done that. And that's through David Lopez and his leadership. He's an amazing guy. Amazing guy. Give you everything you want to know?
Yes, I mean, and you were able to face the challenge, to overcome the difficulties. And just because of these words I wrote, commitment, loyalty, hard work, connections. You said you were like a connector between Latin American world and the US world. So I just the next question was going to be focused on Latin America. You know the region from over 20 years. I know I'm aware that you first were in Latin America in Peru in 1992. Is that right? I'm not sure if that was
Actually,
the
no.
no
In 90,
was
we bought the rights to the laser tag product, and so
yeah.
we sold those into Latin America to a guy out of in Argentina. Actually, in '92, that was my first entrance into Latin America. Was into Buenos Aires.
So
And so,
but it was in that year
yes,
1992.
yeah.
So you
It's
know that the region for over 20 years. So from your perspective, how did the region evolve in terms of gaming, and how is your company, of course, AGS, positioned in the region? How important is Latin America for AGS?
um, it's an interesting question. I think the region has certainly developed and become more mature. Right when I first got to when I was related to the gambling business, it was in 2004 I first landed to represent gambling in the region, and there was huge disparities between operations of kind of owner operated local casino or bingo halls and big kind of corporate operations. And I see that the level of service and the level of the approach to the market has certainly changed. The products that are available in the region has dramatically improved over these last kind of 17, 18 years. Dramatically. Before it was like kind of every used machine from every used market or around the world was somehow cobbled together to work down there, and that's not necessarily the case anymore. As regulations came into developments and people started formalizing the markets more appropriately, I think that the results of that yield better outcomes. And as a result of that, they invest in the markets and started bringing in, fantastic things. And there's some really, really impressive and fantastic operations in all of Latin America. And you can look in any region, you can point to, 4 or 5 kind of great, absolutely fantastic products or properties that I think would compete anywhere globally. I think a really unique part to the Latin American gaming business is their level of service. I see it as much higher. It's much more personal, with their cashiers out on the floor or their hostesses. If you look at the famous Brazilian gaming market with all their promoters during the bingo days, there's that level that's still at every local casino down there, where there's a level of ambassadorship that even AGS supports in our Mexico operations. We have brand ambassadors out there in the casinos talking to players, and I think operators appreciate that. It's very interesting. AGS, so I immediately came in, and when David started talking to me about joining AGS, it was just about, I said, what about South? He said, there's a plan to go South, we're willing to go. And so I immediately was very excited, started, kind of talking to future partners and in every market, Argentina, Peru, Chile, Colombia, Panama, everywhere, and started, I thought we were ready. And then, AGS was growing so quickly at the time when AGS acquired Cadillac Jack, obviously the enterprise itself about doubled in size, and Cadillac Jack's team was still kind of the driving engine of that. But, there was a lot of modifications that needed to be done. Plus there was so much green, field in the US. And so fighting for resources internally of prepping product for international stuff and prepping products for markets that AGS wasn't even in its backyard in North America. So it was a little bit premature, I think, for us to start marketing into South America world specifically, when I first joined. we really had a lot of cleanup to do in Mexico. The product hadn't been, we hadn't invested in our route and our network. And so, after I immediately came up after 90 days, I had this whole plan of how we can cover, every country in South America in 90 days. Sigmund Lee, who's our CTO and a very longtime friend and very, a huge influencer in my life. He said, why don't we just focus on Mexico and Mexico cleaning up? And so I had to backpedal from all the people I was talking to, say, we're not going to do that this year. We're just going to focus on Mexico. So, I know you interviewed my colleague and brother in arms, Eduardo Alvarez, recently. And we've spent the last kind of 4 years really investing into the Mexican market, in our team, in the products, and in the relevancy of raising AGS's relevancy in that market to a place I believe it's been. Through Cadillac Jack, it had been a partner to the Mexican operators for 14, 15 years, and through a different type of leadership had kind of taken a step back and just kind of become a lesser of a player. And through Eduardo's leadership and his on the sales side, through my corporate teams down there, leadership on the operational side, we've got a fantastic infrastructure back. We've kind of rebuilt the brand at AGS into the Mexican market, and are a significant player there, and that's been great. But we did enter the Argentinian market prior to the pandemic. All the machines landed there. We've got a great distributor partner with a company called Permaking, and hopefully over the next several months, you'll be seeing that our Icon product and our Orion product roll out there. We've got all the modifications that we need to make for Argentina are the same basic modifications we need to make for Peru. And so we're kind of lining up the planes to land in Peru, hopefully later this year, but I think timing of the pandemic may impact that as well. It's really, clearly the for sale market has changed dramatically everywhere in the world. Nobody's going to sell the same metal machines that they purchased before, and that's going to take a couple of years to come back. And so there may be some delays into certain of those markets as we continue. But we have, brewing relationships with distributors into Chile, which I see as a fantastic market for the years to come. I think Peru is a fantastic market. Colombia is the one that's still challenging for me, just because some of the importation rules and the sheer size of the market is difficult with the level of coin in. And so, there's some changes we got to do to make a product that's right for that market. And then obviously there's the constant talk about Brazil, right? Constant talk about Brazil, which I hope one day happens. It's a legendary market and a fantastic market, and still in the, many of my friends and colleagues in the gaming industry come from that market. One of my closest friends, Marcus Fortunato, is kind of our partner in building our Latin bingo product. And Marcus is a longtime gaming guy, longtime operator, and I knew him from these guys are all former clients from BMMs that over the years I really truly developed friendships with. Right, they're my friends, and so we're prepped and ready to go whenever that happens. And we hope it happens sooner as opposed to later. I think the industry could use that kind of shot in the arm of a market of that sheer size, right? The sheer number of machines that Brazil could justifiably absorb, and do a really, really high performance. It would be good for our entire industry, not just AGS, right? It'd be fantastic for AGS. But for the industry itself, it would just be amazing. And I truly believe it would be absolutely amazing for the government, for the country, and for the people, right? This is, like everybody else, they've been, vastly hit by the pandemic, and could use a shot in the arm of a new revenue stream through licensing fees and, gambling taxes and everything that comes with that. And then from the employment side alone, it could employ hundreds of thousands of people in a relatively short order, with good, earning jobs. So hopefully that happens. Hope.
Well, it depends on political issues. So we of course want Brazil to start operating in terms of legal gaming, but we have to wait up to now.
Yeah,
And how do you foresee the future for gaming in terms of your next goals? How do AGS is going to continue leading the trend in terms of their products? What do you expect for the future on maybe for the next couple of years?
sure. Um, Look, I think that the genesis of AGS was kind of a distribute. They were AGS was primarily a distribution company for. They didn't really develop their own products. Um, Lopez came in and immediately started up a table games division and started doing that because he can get traction pretty quick in his genesis and his history at Shufflemaster. And then the acquisition of Cadillac Jack, which really developed its own products, had a very solid market in Mexico and a couple of big markets here in the US, but they didn't have really any broader distribution than that. So the marriage of Cadillac Jack and AGS was absolutely fantastic because it gave AGS this really really well-developed R&D team and Sigmund's clear vision of what gaming products should be. And so right at that time was a product called Golden Winds, which was a Cadillac Jack developed game, and right at the time that AGS was acquiring them. So it got branded going out as an AGS product. And they were already working on, Icon, which is still, several years later, 6-7 years later after launch, it's still the number 3 or 4 or 5, that kind of range, depending on the month, performing dual screen cabinet, fantastic product. And with visions of what the next one would be, which is the Orion family. And this beautiful portrait cabinet, which has been great. And so, quickly started selling and putting those games out on route. But what we were missing was in the premium lease division. And so acquisition of a few kind of key people internally and some, good solid product development. This last year, we've been able to really refine our premium lease division, which will include, the Star Wall, which you would have heard about, which is kind of the portrait games with this beautiful integrated LED package in the back. That's a gorgeous product. A curved product, and so we'll do unique titles for our premium lease and premium signage package with that. And that division I see has a lot of growth. And those are all in recurring revenue, which is a natural kind of mode of AGS's business plan. We have a lot of games that we participate with and like that model. And then also be able to sell those products. Portrait be able to sell directly as its own standalone unit into the market as a for sale product. Also, Curve will be for sale with a different library. And so I think that we're positioned very well. Our table games division is headed by a guy named John Hemberger, who's John's a very stern looking guy. If anybody knows John, he's very stern looking all the time. But this guy is so driven, and it took me 3 years to crack him. I'm a pretty talkative guy, and I can talk to him. And I got a smile out of John at probably 2.5 years, and I knew that I'm in, which was good. And but this guy's so committed and so passionate to his products and his business. And I learned so much from watching John. Just stay focused. Just stay focused. At BMM, I was all over the board because it's like I was, involved with, as I said, anywhere from 150 to 200 companies. I had to be across. That means their product, their technology, submission cycle, markets they work in. I was just so scattered. And at AGS, I've learned to stay in my lane. And I've done that a lot by watching John Hemberger just focus on his business, not get distracted by the internal issues of other divisions. It's not he just needs to develop his product. He developed a fantastic single deck shuffler for the poker market. Our second shuffler is hopefully will be released sometime in the first half of next year, which will absolutely be fantastic. And to really develop those products, and his progressive product and his team that works on the progressive thing from the tech side to the creative side to the math side of it, this product is amazing, and it's going to really. I watched John watch slots and say, what can be brought from that that side of the business into this progressive product, and he's doing it. And that product is a game changer for everybody, and certainly for AGS as well. So I think that you'll continue to see us develop a very solid line of content for our for sale products at a pretty good cadence. a good cadence of that product, and also really develop our premium lease product in our premium lease division. And then obviously our Genesis in class 2. So we offer game titles on class 2 and class 3, which is, has to be taken care of on the back end. And so, if we do 50 titles a year, it's really 100 titles a year. There are 100 implementations that we have to do a year. And so focusing and putting the R&D team in place to do that. Just entered the HHR space, which is a unique market here in the US, historical horse racing. And so we just entered that market during the pandemic, actually. And I think that we'll see great success there in the markets that, that product is applicable for, which is not nearly as large as class 2 or class 3. It's very, very specific, but it's emerging. I think that we will, I wouldn't be surprised to see some innovations on our next gen platform with some next gen cabinets as well in the coming couple of years.
Well, the last question, Drew, and thank you very much for sharing your experience with us. The last question I was saying is related to tourism. That is an industry very close to gaming. We usually ask our interviewees about their choices and their preferences in terms of places they have visited before and they could recommend to future visitors. So in your case, which place, one place in Latin America, if you can choose, and one in the US, for you to recommend in terms of the landscapes, the gastronomy, the people. Of course, hopefully thinking about the future possibilities in terms of security, in terms of sanitary measures for people to visit, to be able to visit those places. What would you recommend?
Okay. I don't want to offend anybody, all my friends in Latin America and in South America specifically. Honestly, and you could verify this with others, my favorite city in the world is Buenos Aires. That's my favorite city in the world. You can verify with many people. It's one of the cities I could live in tomorrow. That's how I kind of measure stuff. Like, where could I live tomorrow if I had to? Like, where could I live tomorrow? And aside from the distance and how hard it is from, my home country, because it takes a long time to get there, Buenos Aires is a fantastic city. It is, the food's amazing. The people are amazing. It's so much more multicultural than I think people give it credit for. There's that, that large European influence in the architecture, and it's really an amazing city. Again, it was the first city I visited back in 1992. I stayed at the Hyatt Regency right off the Obelisk. I took a city tour. I'm a big fan of city tours, big fan of city tours. Because I get on a bus that, you get a tour of what's going on, then I can go back and that's the first thing I do. And I remember that city tour, my old business partner, I still laugh about it because it was, going in a circle showing you the cities. But every time she'd see the obelisk, they'd say, and down the avenue, we see the obelisk. It was, so I saw 19,000 views of that obelisk in the first day that I was there. But really, it's one of my favorite cities. But over my time, there's fantastic places in each country. I think I'm very kind of socially connected and kind of emotionally connected to Brazil. I think it's, I love that country, and the sheer size of it is just so immense, and it's so amazing. But yes, but if I encourage anybody their plane is flying in that direction and potentially just stopping, say in Peru to go to Machu Picchu, I'm like, go 5 more hours. You got to see Buenos Aires. It's a fantastic place, fantastic city. And I really would, if it didn't take me 12 hours to get back to the United States, I'd live there tomorrow. Really beautiful city. In the United States, look, United States is, we call it the United States and it's one country, but it's really like not one country, right? There's great parts in every area. But look, my home state of Hawaii is one of the most beautiful places in the world, one of the most secure places in the world, really amazing, and it definitely has my heart. So if anybody has never been to Hawaii, send me an email. Happy to give you like 10 restaurants to eat at and 10 places to go visit, and 10 experiences for you to have there. So Hawaii and Buenos Aires.
Well, that's great. So we have to go to Hawaii, and you have to come
yes.
to Buenos Aires again.
Yes.
Vice President for Latin America, General Manager for for Mexico of AGS, American Gaming Systems. Thank you very much for your time, for your knowledge, for your experiences, everything you have shared with us and with our viewers. Thank you. I've enjoyed a lot this interview. Hopefully you have enjoyed it too. Thank you for your time and for sharing your life and your experience with us.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity. And everybody, wear a mask, stay safe, stay home. Let's get through this thing. We got another few to go. Hopefully the vaccine gets us the rest of the way there. Thank you very much. Peace.
And of course, thank you, executives of the gaming industry and other industries that have watched this interview and all the content that we are uploading every week to our YouTube channel. You can subscribe to this channel, and you can also follow us on our social networks, our platforms. Thank you very much for being with us, for supporting us. We'll continue sharing new contents during December, January, February. We won't stop to generating more creative